Hey everyone, it's Eric Vaughn, Kenra Color Artistic Director. Have you ever had that client sit down in your chair and they show you an inspo photo of somebody who absolutely has hair extensions and they don't, and they're not getting any? Well, I'm gonna show you how to recreate the look of hair extensions in your hair color placement. We've all seen that beautiful highlight, low light effect in extensions and question, like, how do I create that? Because baby lights are never gonna give me that effect. I'm gonna show you how to do that today, so let's get started. Okay, the best part about this placement is when it comes to doing your face frame, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Whatever your inspo photo is, you kind of have the creativity to choose. For me, I'm taking a horseshoe parting, isolating out my face frame altogether. This is super important for your placement because everything else that we're doing to match those extensions is gonna live in this interior. So for your face frame, you just wanna isolate this out as best as possible. And then you have the freedom to choose. I'm gonna be creating kind of like a whispered money piece placement on her. I want it really soft, especially since she has these heavy fringe area. So jumping right into this, we're gonna be doing a lot of teasing. We're gonna be working in groups of threes. I always work in groups of threes to keep me grounded. So let's jump right in. I'm gonna isolate out my fringe area first because I do wanna target this separately. And I'm connecting my face frame all the way down to the back through here. So everything is gonna be really connected along that face frame before we jump into our extension matching placement. So I'm gonna set that back and I'm gonna take my first diagonal back and I'm taking like a pretty good amount of hair. I don't wanna overfoil this. So by taking a little bit of a larger section, it keeps me in control. My first tease of my group of three is going to be just kind of a soft, medium tease. And I'm just gonna clean that out of the way. And then a trick that I like to do is I like to go from the underneath and kind of pull some of that out. All of this is gonna act as a veil for me, so I don't have to do that much when it comes to root shadowing. And because we talked about it being more of a whisper instead of taking this whole section, I'm just gonna do a fine baby weave, leaving this as a dropout. She already has some old highlights down here, so this is almost gonna act as like a tip out for me already. So I'm using what's already existing in the canvas to my benefit. I wanna keep my placement relatively lower on her, so I'm using her eyebrow as my point of reference. So my foil is right in line with her eyebrow, and I'm gonna keep that as a frame of reference through this entire face frame placement. Again, that's gonna create more blend. So this over direction that I'm already doing by standing directly in front of my client is gonna create blend. The teasing is gonna create blend. And the softness in which I paint is going to create blend as well. I'm doing a diagonal angle, higher towards the face, lower towards the back. So when this sits in natural fall, it's really gonna create a beautiful sweep. My lightener that I'm using is our Beyond Bond lightener with 20 volume. I wanna make sure that I get a really good lift, but a very controlled and safe lift. My mixing ratio for this is 1:2. Because I'm using larger subsections, I just wanna make sure that my lightener is able to pass all the way through the hair really easily. And I'm also really heavily saturating the areas that are most important, which is this like mid-shaft area. Through here, I'm feathering up my lightener. This is a powerful lightener, so I know it's gonna give me good controlled lift. And when I'm working in long sections like this, I do not like to fold my foils. I like to lay them flat and just kind of sandwich them in. My next diagonal back of my group of three, taking this section, over directing forward, and now I'm starting from a little bit lower in the hair shaft, so in like the bottom third, and I'm pushing that all the way up. So this is automatically going to create a bolder pop towards her face and even more softness sitting directly behind it. Again, creating more blend and softness for me so I don't have to work that hard later. Continuing with the same baby weave. Again, she has those pre-existing lightness on her ends. So those are gonna give me that tip out feel so I don't have to highlight everything. It's about creating that soft whisper. We've kind of moved away from the like heavy, chunky, bold face frame money piece. And again, if you're watching this with me, what did I say my reference point is for height? Her eyebrow. So I'm placing my foil at her eyebrow. to ensure that I don't paint too high. So groups of threes keep me grounded, and frame of references already keep me grounded as well. Painting with the same angle and really heavily saturating. She does have the pre-existing lightened ends through here, but they're not so light that I'm worried about the overlapping. I want them to get brighter. So I'm okay applying my product to it. Again, because it's Beyond Bond, I know I have the protection that I need while lifting. Through that side there, that nice angle. So when this comes back into her actual natural fall, the over direction, the angle, and the tease are going to give me a ton of blending. Kind of thinking about those things as you're putting in your foils helps you later. I know sometimes we like to just rush and get them in, but then you're spending, an hour at the shampoo bowl when it could have been 15 minutes. So on my very last of my group of three, combing to over direct this all the way forward, I'm starting at the very tips and I'm going to push all the way up. Again, going back at the tip, pushing all the way up. That's gonna give me maximum amount of blending. Continuing with my baby weave. And again, something to keep in mind, if we have the same reference point, but we keep working back the head, if everything is painted to this point, when hair goes back in its natural fall, again, that is also creating that high to low progression, which is gonna create even more interior softness. Especially on this face frame where we wanna make sure it's not too strong. So see how I naturally just wanted to place my foil in right at the base of my tease? That would disrupt what I'm doing. So I'm gonna slide that down and really focus on her eyebrow. Her really strong, beautiful eyebrows. Continuing with that same angle, not going any higher than what was done before it. And again, we always think of our money piece as what's coming from the fringe area, but this side panel is just as important in creating your money piece because it connects it the whole way down. And this is where you can kind of have freedom of expression in this placement to kind of do whatever you want in this face frame. It can be as bold or as soft as you want. Now that my third foil is placed into my group of three, I'm gonna target her nape in just one foil. I don't wanna overfoil the nape if we're thinking about extensions and we're thinking about the extensions that we're using as our example. You don't wanna overfoil this because this could potentially create a unblended end result if the nape is over highlighted. So I'm just doing one foil and I'm gonna start all the way from the bottom, pushing that all the way up, which is pushing a good majority of that hair up. And I'm just gonna do a soft baby weave here just to bring in some of that lightness, but I don't wanna overfoil that nape. I just wanna make sure that my face frame has connection all the way around. And the way that I'm using as a reference point for this, obviously I'm not by her eyebrow, but I'm using my last foil here as my reference point. So I'm over directing this forward, which is gonna create more sweeping softness through here. And I'm gonna paint from a high to low, so it's going to connect to what's happening here and still continue that sweeping softness all around that face frame. Painting in my high to low, really saturating just to make sure I have everything good so we have great lift. Perfect. I'm gonna do this on the other side and then we'll come back to target her fringe area. All right, so we've wrapped up both of our sides here. So now we're gonna start targeting into our face frame fringe area. So again, I'm very consistent when it comes to working in groups of threes. It keeps me grounded. So I'm gonna work in the same way, taking my first diagonal back. So I'm gonna give that just a very soft tease. Again, going back to the underside and just pulling that down. And continuing with our baby weave. Again, I want this very soft. And then if we're thinking about what our reference point was on the sides here, which was our eyebrow, we're gonna use our eyebrow as a reference point here as well, because again, we wanna create that same softness. So I'm gonna go in get my ends fully saturated. And for this, I'm not painting with a solid high point. I'm almost painting like this like chompy little W here. So it comes up, has a little bit of stagger through the center, and then back up on the outer point. I'm painting that because with this being such a shorter fringy area, I don't want to create a high to low point. I want to make sure that everything has just like this really soft, beautiful fringe area. So no matter where she flips her hair, everything is kind of even around this corner. So I'm just above her eyebrow here. So again, really focusing on my reference points, my teasing, and my over direction to create all of the blend for me. Taking my second diagonal back, and this is going to have a little bit more of a tease when I'm going to tease this in two different ways. Because she has this fringe area, I'm gonna tease my fringe first and then go back in and tease this little bit of this longer section to all go into the same foil. So I'm gonna over direct this forward and give that a nice, more of that like middle tease, set that down, come back and do my middle tease on my longer section. If I tried to tease all of that together in one sitting, we'd end up getting too much of the fringe area teased up and not enough of this longer section. So by teasing it in two pieces, I'm able to get the same amount of tease across this whole section and kind of target it just like a little bit easier. Going in with my baby weave, placing my foil exactly where it is on my first foil, targeting my ends first. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, kind of that like staggered W. And for this, I am folding it only because there's just a tiny bit of those lengths there. And I wanna keep it kind of comfortable in front of her face. When I go to fold these back at the end of my placement, I'll probably open them up and make them more flat. So for my last section, same thing. I've got more of my fringe, and then I've got this like a little bit of this disconnected length here, so I'm gonna target them separately. So over directing this forward, starting from her ends, and I'm gonna push all the way up. Giving this fringe area a really nice tease. Going back from the length here, over directing this forward, and I'm gonna give that a really nice push up as well. Now I'm gonna combine them back together and give it my final baby tease. I'm gonna paint this exactly as I painted the other side. So I'm gonna place my foil here, paint my ends, and do my little staggered W. I'm gonna finish this, do the other side, and then we're gonna get into the meat of our extension placement. All right, so we've completely completed our face frame. So now we're gonna be getting into the really technical part of our extension matching placement. A lot of the times I see extensions like these being used, and if this was going here in a row, you wanna match your color placement exactly to how this extension is going to look. A lot of the times we go in and we just put all these itty bitty little baby lights in, and then we add extensions like this, and we don't have that like true perfect blend. So we want to keep extensions in mind. So obviously you would match it to whatever extensions you're using. So if the dimension is softer, you match the softness. If it's bolder, you match the bold. It's all in how it's applied in the head that creates the softness towards the root. And we're gonna talk about that here in a second. So for today, I'm gonna be matching this type of width with my extension and with my color placement. So I'm gonna show you how I would create these highlights and lowlights in the canvas. So let's get going. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm sectioning just like I would in my extension row. So you can see I've got it fully sectioned off at that slight diagonal angle, just like I would put in my weft. Now, if you know, I always put my weft here to here, put your color placement below it, put your color placement above it. So when you install your extensions, the color sits below and above where that row is. So you just have this beautiful continuation of color. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about where you're going to be putting in your extensions. Our end result is actually not gonna have extensions at all. We're just using it as a frame of reference, but this is how I color when I'm doing dimensional color for extensions. So starting this off, I'm working in my 2 halves, and I'm gonna go in with very wide planking weaves that match the width of the highlight dimension in the extensions. So see how nice and bold that is? Obviously pretty chunky. I'm gonna show you how to make it soft, but still get that bold dimension through the ends. Now, because she has previous highlights and some sun exposure creating lightness through here, I'm clipping those highlights up out of the way. That's gonna be my highlight. And I'm gonna go right in between and scoop up all of the dropouts. These are going to live directly in between those highlights, creating that highlight and low light effect that my extensions have. And I'm using wide foils so I can work all the way in halves and target everything. So with my low light formula, I'm using our Demi-Color with my formula 5N and 5B. I'm using the B to give me a little bit of that really beautiful beigey tone, but I also know that my beige lives slightly on the cooler side. So it's going to help me to control while maintaining richness on these ends. Now, I'm not going to paint this all the way up to the root because I like her root color and she doesn't have that sun exposure lightness up towards her root. So I'm just gonna feather this up into it, but I'm really saturating my ends. And so that formula is equal parts 5N, 5B with 9 volume, and I actually mixed it 1 to 1.5. I wanted my consistency a little bit thicker, and I wanted a deeper deposit as well. So I take my foil, lay that directly over the top, and just fold my sides. Now, I drop my highlights. So see how those highlights are literally going to sit and have those low lights directly in between them. Now, this is a bolder result that I'm looking for on my ends, but I don't necessarily want a bolder result up towards my root. So I'm gonna take my comb and give this a really nice push. You could also go in and do a really beautiful air touch technique on this with your blow dryer to push out all those short hairs if teasing isn't your desired method. There are other options for you if that's not your favorite. We've all had those clients that the wind blows and their hair tangles, so they're not always gonna be the best option for teasing. So in that case, you can use your air touch technique for that. So remember on our face frame, we had a frame of reference point, right? We had a reference point of her eyebrows. So we're gonna continue with that same reference point here on the side. So I don't wanna bring my color placement higher than her eyebrows. So I paint in kind of the meat of my section, saturating my ends thoroughly. And again, we're working in bigger subsections. So my lightener is mixed 1 to 2, so that way I can get all the way through this hair really, really well. And again, I'm still using my Beyond Bond lightener with 20 volume. I love the consistency of this lightener because I can get through the hair so easily. I love that the hair feels great at the end of the service too, because it does lift well, but it has the protection that I need to keep the hair healthy. And now I'm just doing that kind of we called it chompy W because it has that kind of bite mark effect. And now we're just gonna continue this on the other side, and it's gonna be this exact same pattern up the head. We'll come back in so I can show you my last foil and how I finish it. All right, we continued working up the sides, continuing in our horseshoe sections just like you would do your installs. I'm all the way up here on the very top now, and this is where you can start to get a little bit creative. So on my foil just below, I started taking much finer weaves, bringing it up just a tiny bit higher, because now I'm outside of extension blending world. Now I'm just in creative hair color. Just like we did in our face frame, it's totally customizable. So based off of this center parting, I'm gonna create just the tiniest little veil that I'm gonna do on both sides and leave that out. So that way when everything is down and she's parted down the center, she'll have this really beautiful veil just laying over to keep this color really soft and lived in. So right underneath the veil, connecting to what I've been doing underneath. And I'm just gonna go in here and I'm just gonna add a nice little sprinkle of baby lights just through this section. So I have just this little like sprinkly veil that lives over all of this dimensional placement, and then my absolute veil on top that's gonna blend over and give me that seamless result. So again, once you get up into the like top section of the hair, above the recession, you can really kind of customize this and do this however you want. I am going to bring this slightly above eyebrow, which I did on the foil below, because again, I'm into that like creative hair color realm, not necessarily creating the effect of the extension. So I'm slightly higher, and I'm just going to paint my lightener through the interior, that middle section there. Get my lightener on nice and thick. Saturate this really, really well. And now I am going to paint for blend with a very soft high to low. And then I'm just going to repeat the same thing on the other side, and then we're gonna let her process. Okay, we are back, and I wanted to show you before we did anything, I wanted you guys to see just like the raw placement. It is so blended, soft, and seamless already, and I love that you can already see those highlights and lowlights really peeking out. So you're getting that extension dimension already, but we are gonna go ahead and go in and do a root shadow and melt, just because we wanna make sure that everything is so seamless. So I'm gonna go through with the same low light formula to keep it really cohesive and keep the tones similar. So again, it was our Kenra Demi 5N 5B with 9 volume, and I did mix it 1 to 1.5 for a deeper saturation. So I'm gonna go through and start to blend that through, and then we'll come back and talk about our full gloss formula in just a minute. But I did just kind of wanna comb through here very quickly, so that way you guys can start to see some of that placement peeking out. So you guys can see the like heaviness of that really beautiful face frame, which is what you would be doing on your clients regardless. And then as I comb through, you can really see that extension-like highlight and low light really peeking through all of that color. And everything, because it was over-directed forward with the tease, everything in Natural Fall is laying just so soft and seamless already. But again, I'm all about the most blend possible, so we're still gonna do that root melt and tone, which I'm gonna start right now. All right, so we've got our root melt on currently. I have isolated out her face frame just because I wanted to drag this back area down just a little bit more. I used my brush to really blend that through. Don't be afraid to get in there with your brush and blend and drag. When people don't blend and drag with their brush is when we tend to have like really sharp lines of demarcation from our root melt. So don't be afraid to brush. Now I'm going in with my all over gloss, which is gonna be blended from my root shadow down. I'm going in, it's 20 grams of 7N, 20 grams of 8GB, 20 grams of Gold Violet Rapid Toner, and then also 7 grams of 6C, 6 copper. I want a really rich, level 7, 8, almost thinking like a brown copper, but very light on the copper. We just want it really, really rich. So that Gold Violet Rapid Toner is in there to give me that punch of gold into my formula, and the 6C to give me that little bit of that background of copper. And the way that I'm going to apply this, I like to get in there and apply fast and efficiently. So I use my hands, and I'll saturate through the ends first. And then I blend this up to my root melt. So again, I'm going to grab my subsection, gloss in hand, and I really work that in, and I like to rub from side to side with like a little bit of friction, just to make sure that I'm getting everything thoroughly saturated first. Then I work that up to kiss with my root shadow formula. And my gloss formula is mixed 1 to 2, as opposed to my root shadow formula that was mixed 1 to 1.5. I combine with my section below to continue working that in, and I'll even go in with my hand and blend up into my root shadow. And so I'm just gonna continue this up the head and apply, and then I'll see you guys back for our end result. And here is the end result of our gorgeous extension placement color. I hope you guys learned a lot today. Just to do a quick recap, your face frame, anything you want. Today we did that whisper face frame, so you guys can see here, it's really soft around her face. It accents so pretty. I did the groups of 3s, keeping the eyebrow as that point of reference, which I think is really important to use the body parts as your points of reference. Keeps you grounded, keeps you in check. Then we went through and we did our wide planking weaves. The weaves that we picked up being our highlights, then we went back and scooped out our lowlights in between. Really beautiful formula to get all of this really gorgeous piecey dimension. Then once you get back up towards the crown, anything goes. Whatever your inspo photo is, that's what you can put here because you're no longer trying to create that extension method. We did those itty bitty little baby lights with that veil over the top. Root melt, final gloss, and it is so seamless, so beautiful. We didn't even have to root melt. We just wanted to for extra security. If you guys love these tutorials, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop me a comment in the comment box because I wanna know what you guys wanna see next.